All right, there it is. Let's go ahead and we'll do our names at the end again so that if she gets on, she'll be there. But oh, there she is. What'd she say? Oh, that's you, Jen. Okay. She may just be having one of those mornings. I think that's the general consensus this morning, at least for me. Okay, so the first question, having completed the book, did everybody read the book?
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought it was really good. I actually read it in one sitting. I didn't have to set it down. So, so having completed the book, how has your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law? Hello, Elisa.
Hey, sorry.
Well, you do look very beautiful, so it's good.
Thanks. I woke up last night to plug my phone into my computer, and my kids had taken scissors to the cord. So then I was like, fine, I'll just use the laptop, but it wouldn't connect to the internet.
Oh, what a struggle. We're glad you made it.
Now, so that's what's important.
It is. And
So
it'll
does
be
anybody
something
want to
you look
go
back on
about
someday and tomorrow.
their perception on international policy and law? I think we had kind of talked about this on another meeting we had, but
I can go first. I was kind of disappointed. I know nothing about it, and I don't know, I guess it really doesn't even mean anything. It's a bunch of people just telling their own opinions, and I was surprised at how pushy people were.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of wanted to know the end, like now what happened.
Yeah, I think it's an uphill battle every time they go and do something from what it sounds like. And I was kind of like you, and my response that I wrote down, I put that I wasn't aware of what the UN did and what the conferences were for, and I said, and I'm not a fan of the way they implement changes or take votes because it seems really unbiased or biased, unfair. It misrepresents the true feelings of a lot of countries and their representatives and the people from those countries, and the bully tactics were horrible. You can't really do that in a lot of places and get away with it.
I thought about the story in itself. I too was unaware. I think that's what this class is for, is to make us aware of why it's important to be advocates. But as far as the book, the bullying tactics really surprised me too. But then again, it didn't, because these people from the beginning have been pushing an agenda that they know is not popular, and so they've Satan works in secret combinations and undermining and bullying, and so you could just see how much of an opposition this is, and how to me it was like, man, Satan's hand is totally in this. There was very little good that was coming from their viewpoints and what they were really pushing.
It is, but it's interesting that, for the way that they go through things, how they actually, the things that they put on, they are actually referred to, and they actually change things downstream. That even though I can't remember exactly what it said, but like judges will refer to things or for the UN, and I can't remember.
Did anybody read his paper?
I remember thinking, I'm most of the way through it, but I just remember thinking, look at how these little things, even though they're the minority and they're pushing and bullying in this one area, their actions and the things that they get done really affect things downstream quite a bit. a lot of things have changed because of what they've done.
I think it also starts small. I mean, it started small, the equal rights, and then it's pushed further and further each time. It just gets, okay, we got this through, so now we can push this through, and they've accepted this, so now we can do that. And I think the biggest part of the book, as well as for him, and it made an impact on me, was that "where have you been" line that happened to, people were struggling, but they didn't have the education or the law background or any of that to really articulate what they were trying to say, and so it kept getting pushed down. And it wasn't until somebody who had the knowledge and ability to articulate what needed to be said, and even in the epilogue in the end, when he brought in another law professor and lawyer, that the two of them had to really continue to push through, the legal aspects of everything.
Right.
Well, and apart, because I don't know if they ever gave the name of the lady sitting next to him that was telling. Gosh, I should have written her name down.
I don't think she ever had a name.
It didn't give her name right, but then the one that was the really bad lady from the 40s.
Oh.
I forgot her name, but just the fact that how it pointed out that. So, anyways, that lady that was talking, that it pointed out that the people the bad lady was teaching, that they're now coming back and pushing their agenda that's almost even worse than hers, because they've now added the abortion, and they've added stuff that she didn't even believe in. So it seems like each generation is getting worse and worse and kind of feeding off the generation before, and they're just teaching more and more. But then I don't know, I guess I'd like to know what really has changed since he went. Like, what did his paper change? What did he end up changing?
I don't think it was a whole lot. I think they were able to change the language enough to make it acceptable and okay. And honestly, I think it's something that has to be probably readdressed every time it comes up.
Right. So is it going to be where it's just that generations of where we've got generations have to learn from him, I guess, and now things for the better, I guess.
Well, continue the fight. I don't know if it's ever going to change for the better. I think it's always going to be a fight. I mean, the bottom line is they're always going to be pushing their agenda, and they're always going to have more money behind it. And I wonder it talked about in some of our other readings, the policymakers, how they are very ignorant of what really is being placed before them. They just see the money, the perks, whatever. And so it made me really think about, how important it is for us to be educated on it, and then to advocate for others to be educated. And a lot of times, I've even seen in some of my readings the biasness towards fathers, and trying to still, there's probably twice as many reports that say that they're not a necessary part of a child's development as there are those reports that show that they are a necessary part of the development.
Well, and that's a lot of the reason why single women can go in and get artificially, or they can go get a sperm donor and get pregnant and raise their kids without the father. I commented on your thing, on your discussion board post, that I've run into so many things where the dads are not even mentioned, or the focus is on the mother. It's like the dads have been pushed aside, and they really are important.
So I had something to say about what Melissa said. So backtrack a little bit. So I think you had said, Melissa, that you wondered what had changed, like from when the book was written to now. And I kind of thought about that too, because I mean that was a while ago. That was I mean, he's talking about how the proclamation had just come out, and that was, 20 years ago.
20.
So a lot happens in 20 years. So I have two thoughts on that. One, when they went back to the next conference, he said that nothing had changed. He said that they basically pretended like that conference didn't exist. Like, their agenda didn't happen, and so they just ignored it. And we've also seen that in the various UN videos we've heard about how there are fewer and fewer people on the pro-family side of everything that are there and supporting traditional families and marriage. So I think that kind of lets us know how that's going. The other thing I thought about is that it's like that. Well, not that it's like that, but the thing is that the effect. So we were saying that like the bag kind of rolls and rolls and rolls, and it goes on and on from every generation. Like it just, then go get food. It just goes and goes, and our voices are always going to need to be heard. It's kind of like how we hear the same talks every time at General Conference, because the prophet and apostles and everybody, they're reminding us of the same things, and we have to be that voice for the family that's there every time, reminding everybody this is what's going on and this is what you need to do about it.
Yeah. I also, was it Jacob in the Book of Mormon that was talking about, he said, he talked about how he was sorry he had to talk about certain things, but it was his responsibility to teach the people and to talk about it, because if he didn't, he would have part of their sin on his head.
Yeah, it's
Do you
Jacob.
remember what I'm talking about, ladies?
It's Jacob.
So, okay, thank you. And so I was thinking about that in relation to, the UN and his trip there, and how it didn't seem, how it's always going to be an uphill battle, and how the ladies that we watched their video clips the other day, they talked about how we're going to lose a lot more battles than we win, but we have to keep going. And I thought, we do have a responsibility. Not everyone is going to hear the message. Not everyone's going to accept the message, but we need to make sure that people have the opportunity to hear the message and make their own informed choice similar to that. I don't know if that made sense at all, but it sure did in my head.
Roseanne, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I was going to say, like what Elisa said, that when he went back to that other one, a lot of them wouldn't go back to it, but when he got there, it was like they just, well, we lost that one, so we're not even going to recognize that one. We're just going to start from where we were at and push it through. And I thought, wow, they're going to get their, or they think they're going to get their agenda no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with the rest of you. I was shocked at how it actually worked and what actually went on, and how scary it is that this actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what role did you see the Lord playing in Professor Wilkins' efforts to advocate for families of the world? What lessons did you learn from your own efforts? I thought the first thing was, it's no coincidence that he was put down as from that, was misunderstood at who he was and where he was from. I can't remember the name of the school they thought he was
from the Kennedy Center.
Kennedy Center, yeah. And that was no, that was not an accident. That was definitely, I felt like the Lord providing an avenue for him. Anybody else? What their thoughts?
Even feel that he wasn't clean shaven because he still had his beard from the play.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The look too.
Yep, he had the look. Well, and I also thought, he softened hearts, and God put a mouthpiece where he needed him. So, like you ladies were saying, he there was a path, and you can, looking back, you can see where the dots connect. And then God helped Richard, no, what's his name, Professor Wilkins, helped him speak in a way that was most appropriate and effective, and he helped him circumvent all the oppositional roadblocks that were put in his place or in his path nearly every step of the way. He had to fight every step of the way. How much weight did he lose? Was it like 30 pounds that he lost in like 2
something
weeks?
like that.
I'd sure like to do that, but I don't want to do it the way he did. But, you know, so really, the Lord didn't make things any easier for him, and the trials were still there, but He made it possible. He made things possible, you know, where there wouldn't have been a stepping stone. God made the stepping stone there, but He still had to fight every step of the way.
The thing that I noticed that stood out to me that hasn't really been mentioned was just the sense of peace and surety that he was given. You know, he knew that he was going to be chosen. He knew that people would listen to what he had to say. I mean, at first he was nervous, but as the thing went on, he could feel through the Spirit the power of what he was saying. He sat down at the computer and in a half hour wrote everything that he needed to say in his speech.
Yes.
He got up and had 4 minutes and was able to cut down what he needed, and he knew exactly what to say. It was just the knowledge of the truth that he had and the peace that he found in that. I mean, that was impressive to me.
Yeah, I like that too. One thing that I kept coming to me on, and not necessarily the Lord's role, although he used her as an instrument, but he was fighting these women who were saying that men are not important and that they oppress women, and yet who did he keep going to for his strength and for, you know, encouragement? It was his wife. She was the huge backbone on him making it through the whole thing. I know the Lord, and he relied on the Spirit and such, but his support, his strength, you know, was his wife, and yet these women couldn't see that if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been able to stand up against them as well as he did. So I find that too. I mean, the Lord played a part with using her as his strength, but it shows how important, you know, that he thought of her and her ability to bless him and give him the strength and even the idea of the family proclamation that came from her. So. Okay, should we go on to the next question?
Yeah.
Even though the book was largely about Richard Wilkins' experience, what important supporting roles did you see others playing in this account? Okay, I just said mine. Why is it important to recognize this? I forgot I was moving ahead.
I think the fact that there were other people that were in the same camp as him is important. A lot of the people aren't mentioned by name. They're just, I talked to this person, or I saw that person, or somebody said this to me. They're not, I mean, it's not even memorable enough for him to have a name for the person. The point is that there were other people. If it had been just him and all of the women's caucus, it would have been very different. The fact that he wasn't alone and that there were other people in the same fight and they got together and they did it together is important. I don't think that there was a specific role that was, I mean, other than his wife, but that was supporting in a different way. I don't think that there was.
Well, there was Susan, because she's the one that got him to go, and she's the one that brought the computer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she had a pretty big role in, because she had a pretty big role to get him involved in a lot of it. So I would say she had a pretty big role also. But I know what you mean too. But I'd assign her name too as a pretty big role in it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't trying to say that there weren't important people. I was just saying
Right.
that
it was a group effort.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the fact that there were other people there and that they worked together was so important.
And that whole little room that he'd talk about, that would get together on the computer with the whatever that smell of the transformer and just get together and work till late hours of the night. Yeah, we don't know everybody that was there.
Well, and he had so many copies of his paper, and he worked with so many people from different religions in different countries, and like I said, a lot of them aren't even mentioned by name, or any more than a bunch of delegates from Africa. Like, even specific countries aren't pointed out. It's just a huge number of people all working together to stand up for what they know is right.
And even just the United Families, they weren't enough. It took the strength of the Middle Eastern group that was there and the African group and those that were standing strong in the meetings. I mean, if they had faltered at any point in time, then they would have lost it. So, yeah, he gave them the words to use, but it was those fighting in the room on that second meeting that actually held it strong. So,
I think it was interesting that kind of tying the two questions together. I don't think it was any coincidence that one lady sat next to him and spilled the whole history of the UN. And she was a support in that he was able to see what had actually happened and how it had come about, which he hadn't known before. And then he researched it and was able to find that at one point families were a part of the UN, and that he could go back and say, this is what it used to be like. And so, the Lord's hand and her support and stuff was one thing that stood out to me.
I agree, and that brings it to his assistant that he brought. He was very probably just as busy as he was and under-mentioned in the book.
Yes.
It kind of makes me think of how different it would be now if he went, just with social media and that. I wonder how much the UN is on social media.
Well, that is interesting. I'm going to have to Google that.
Oh.
And I wonder if the UN has an Instagram account or something.
Let's see, United Nations.
As Elisa, as you were talking about, I was thinking about, would you be doing selfies with some of those African delegates, or would you, in the 90s we just didn't do stuff like that, but I would be like, hey, bud, come do a selfie, or, I'd be doing stuff like that, or I'd be taking a picture of me with all my 500 copies, and it's just different now.
Yeah.
You have cell phones to talk to your wife and texting and all that kind of stuff.
There's a whole list of Facebook pages. United Nations, there's two. United Nations Human Rights, United Nations Development Program, United Nations Foundation, United Nations Careers, United Nations and the Youth.
Huh.
There's a whole page of them.
Yeah, it's because United Nations is more than just one specific thing.
Right.
It's more than just family policy.
Right.
So it would make sense that there would be a ton of pages. But you're right. If you're going to spend all that money on 500 copies of a paper, you better take a selfie with it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how his experiences would be so much different now, all these years later.
Interesting. The Facebook page on the United Nations is I'm just scrolling really fast through it, but it's open. People are posting, and I'm wondering who the person who is in charge of it. Oh, it's an unofficial page. Oops. I wonder if there's an official page. Anyway. Yeah, I think that I think that from there to now, I think there'd be huge. I mean, how many people would be tweeting? Can you believe what so and so did? Trying to, demoralize or make them look horrible and get a public outcry. I mean, you get that already from people. People are raising money for Kanye West, and for what? So for him to indulge in his lifestyle and criticize people, but it's out there. You can totally put somebody down, and anyways, it would be a different story now. It happened at that time for a reason too, and I think that the fight, we could use the social media too. This is what they're doing right now at the UN. I mean, how is that something that they do? And can you get attached to, follow that tweet or whatever? Probably. I just don't tweet, so.
Yeah, I'm not good at. I need my kids to help me out. Yeah, what can we do from our homes? Because I can't be traveling all over the world.
That's where the social media comes in. Because we can do it from our home, and like even the articles. Did any of you want your articles posted or submitted?
At first, I didn't want to, and then I felt like I needed to, so I talked to her, and she's working with me to change it to make it ready. So.
Well, the opposite. I wanted to and then didn't. So.
Oh. Well, and that's fine. I just was thinking that's another way that, social media is so powerful. It lets us advocate from our own homes. We can write articles. We can put posts on our social media. We can, we can affect a change out there, or cause people to unfriend us. But
well, now you don't have to unfriend. You can just unfollow. So.
Yes. Yeah, but if we make them really mad, then they'll punish us by unfriending us.
That's right. That's right.
Or they can put the dislike. They've got the new dislike and love, like, and wow buttons.
Yeah, I totally couldn't figure out how to use that last night. I think I was too tired.
Just hover over it.
Just hover? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you hover or click and hold. I can't remember which. But
and it didn't do anything. It just liked it.
Oh. It doesn't do it on the follow-up replies. It'll do it on the main posts, though. I was able to do it last night.
I don't know. I'll figure it out later.
Okay, so what are some consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy?
I put an increasingly debased and amoral society, increased crime and poverty with decreased education and productivity.
You also get a what was I gonna say? You get a society that is less focused on the family and less focused on doing the things that are good for society. Recently, I think it was in my child development class, we were what was it? Moral restraint, self-restraint, that sort of thing. And I think when your society becomes more focused on individuals and less focused on something higher than yourself, you don't develop the qualities that are necessary to have a well-functioning society. You become more concerned about you than about everybody else, and if you're more concerned about yourself than your family, then what's to stop you from being more concerned about yourself than your company, or yourself and your school, or yourself and your country? Like, if you don't focus on the family and establish that as a unit higher than the self, then it's really easy to just always focus on the self, no matter what the circumstances.
Yep,
because
that's true.
because it's in the family that these qualities that you need to have a well functioning society, that's where they're learned, that's where they're taught.
My thoughts went to big government and how they would take on more of the role of raising the kids and making sure that, you know, but I think also people would stop having kids because they would become problem children.
Well, that's already happened. Most of the countries in the world are either at or below sub replacement levels for even maintaining their population. Not even growing their population, but there's going to be a decline.
Right, and so, but as government takes control, I mean, you see this in China. They had the one-child law, and then what has happened with that, and then, but I just see that when you take away the importance of the family, and all of a sudden the government, you know, you have all-day daycare for children, like it talked about in the book, 12 hours. Can you imagine being a child stuck in a daycare for 12 hours? And then that thought just sickened me, but that's the liberating feeling that the women want. And even the lady that from the 50s, what she talked about her kids, I mean, she said her kids were worth, you know, a waste of her time, and the kids all had issues afterwards. And so you can see how, you know, the self, like you said, Lisa, is important, but when you put it in the government's hands, you're going to have, you know, they've got to do something, so that's where it's going to go. It's more of a socialistic attitude that these women were pushing for.
Well, the problem is children need things. And if parents aren't giving children things, then somebody else has to. Like, there's no way around that. So,
but if we're fighting for the family, and people are realizing that the family can take care of these things better, and you allocate more to what the child needs than the government taking over and allocating. I mean, that's going to cost a lot of money, which would higher taxes, higher rates for everything. The government had to step in and do more.
Yeah, that's all I was just agreeing with you that, like, the thing is, like, children need people to take care of them, and if parents aren't going to, then the government has to, and that's going to lead to, well, it's going to lead to a lot of things. Like, have you guys done the other reading for the week?
Yeah.
The family policy reading. So in there they talk about how like families are changing and the government just can't keep up, and that's another problem. So not only is there going to be more need for government intervention, but it's going to be harder to maintain all of that because the policies that we have already are behind where we need them to be.
Right.
So increasingly not looking to the family is going to increase the need for government, and the government's going to try and catch up to that. And it's just, there's already a gap between where it's needed and where it is.
But I think one thing we do need is better data. That's one thing I've gotten from our readings is there's no data out there. We don't even know what we need. We don't even know who's out there that can help.
And one of the things I'm learning in my other class is that, you know, with the social interactionism and stuff is what we're studying this week, and there's 4 main researchers that helped move the discussion for the need for family studies of families to be done. And so they've come up with, just in the last 100 years, we finally have the ability to do empirical research on families and start to gather information on families and to do all of that. And so things are starting to come. There's things in the pipeline, but there's not nearly enough data. Like you said, Melissa, there's not enough yet, but I think it's coming. There's been a few changes. Oh.
Yeah, I was just surprised in her what she was saying. Well, if the if the biological parent or the step parent filled it out, you couldn't put the biological kids or whatever she was saying. Like, I was just kind of surprised at that.
Right.
Lack of information just because of who was filling the form.
Right.
That surprised me. It's a census data. Like, that's what I'm, doing genealogy, and you're going off of, 150 years ago. That's what you're going off of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just surprised me, I guess. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Okay, the last question is based on sacred duty. What do you think we can do about it? Does the author implicitly or explicitly make realistic suggestions for ordinary citizens as well as those in a position of power and influence? Provide examples.
We've kind of talked about that already.
We have, talked about studying and advocating and speaking up and contacting congressmen and representatives.
Mm-hmm. I think that staying informed is a huge thing that I know that's something that I found that I lack in, but sometimes, you think ignorance is bliss, but I think that's how I lost my husband too, because I felt all was well in Zion and it wasn't. And so I think that sometimes ignorance isn't bliss, and that being informed, if I'd known now what I knew then or what I didn't know then I think things would have ended up differently. So interesting. Educating ourselves, making sure that we're not part of the problem.
Yes.
Even just this week, it's been amazing how many things I've noticed with bills and things just in the news that I didn't really pay attention to before, but just because we're reading about it, I'm like, oh, it's kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
Just kind of stood out to me.
Do one thing that's been on my mind as I was reading and stuff, and because the same thing, I've been paying more attention and noticing more things, and like the video clip we had to watch with the passing, count the passes.
Mm-hmm.
How we focus on certain things and we miss a lot of things. I keep thinking of this movie. It's also a book, but The Giver. Have any of you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
And how everyone was just kind of going along, and the government was taking care of everybody. I just kept thinking, how easy it could be to get to that point where we lose all of that freedom and we lose all the color in our life and a lot of the choices, and not even realize it, and how sterile the family was. It was almost just like roommates. Anyway, that just keeps coming to my mind all week as I read through things.
It's interesting.
Well, and you also have to remember that Satan's plan was that he would control everything and make sure we got back to where we needed to be, and that's lack of our choices and our ability to choose.
That's true. Pretty dystopian. Yeah, we're ready to summarize. Does anyone else have anything?
I was going to say the one thing that I was going to mention is that if you go back to the proclamation, if you get rid of the family, at the end it says that that society and nations will fall if you get rid of the family. And I think that's important to remember, that the prophet told us that this is what would happen. You read it in the Book of Mormon all the time.
You also read it in the Bible, and you read it in world history.
Right.
Any huge emperor, fell when there was a lack of when there was more self-interest than there was in others. So, and that's what the family does teach you. And one of my studies on the fathers is that fathers' growth and development, instead of focusing on the child, I chose to read one on the father's development is greater when they have children and are in a loving relationship, and that they felt like they're better people and they've grown and developed in their life, and And so I thought that was interesting that, you know, if you don't go in that direction, you're not going to know what you're missing. And
Right.
sure, it's hard, but it makes us better people.
Yes. I have to go. Are we
Okay,
ready to summarize?
Summarize, yeah.
Do we want to say our names first or last?
Go ahead. I'm Deneen Felshaw.
Shancy Christensen.
Elisa Swenson.
Melissa Hunt.
Roseanne Lloyd.
Okay, we had a good discussion today, as usual. I love this group. We talked about the questions that were posed, how we weren't aware of what the UN did and what the conferences were for. Melissa mentioned that, well, actually several of us mentioned that it didn't seem fair and it misrepresented a lot of things, the way that they did things. The bully tactics weren't very cool. We saw the Lord playing his hand in things with Professor Wilkins' experience. He softened hearts. He was a mouthpiece. He provided a way where there wouldn't have been a way beforehand. Didn't make things easier for Professor Wilkins, but he did make things possible. Just like things with having the beard and the mistake with him being with the Kennedy Center. And let's see, the next question. We talked about how he wouldn't have been able to do what he did without the tremendous support of his family, his ward, his wife, all of the other delegates that were there. Was it Susan and all the people there that, like, even in passing, had conversations with him that helped him be able to find the information that ultimately helped him when he got up to speak, helped him say just the right thing in a small amount of time. Let's see, we talked about how going to the UN conferences today, 20 years later, it would be a really different experience. There'd be lots of selfies and social media posts, and but seriously, the social media is powerful and it can allow us to advocate even from our own homes. Have more of a influence on even just the people around us. We all kind of agreed that there would be risks in minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy. The society would be more amoral. There'd be more crime, more poverty, less education. Society is it would be more of an individualistic society. People would be focused more on doing things for themselves and not developing skills to focus and help outside of themselves, and that's kind of where big government comes in. Big Brother kind of takes control when you take away the importance of family, like when you have 12-hour daycares and things like that. Just things pull things away from the family. The current policies for family are already way far behind where we need them. There's a gap in where for what is needed and where things are. And then the last question, we talked about things that we can do and as ordinary citizens. We can advocate, we can study, we can speak up, we can be informed and contact our congressmen, our representatives. We talked about the proclamation and how it said at the very end, if you get rid of the family, societies and nations will fall. And that is true. If you look in the cycle of the Book of Mormon, if you look in the Bible, and if you look at world history, when family has been, when the importance of family has been lessened, that societies have fallen. And I think that was about it. Did I miss anything, ladies?
No, it sounds good.
Great job. Very thorough.
Well, really good discussion. Thanks for all the information. Okay, I have to go. Thank you so much.
Good luck at your viewing.
Good luck.
Thank you. Do you need me to do anything for next week's meeting?
I'll go ahead and start the meeting next week.
Is next week's meeting where we have to give our speech?
Yeah, I think so.
Melissa, what are we going to do for you?
Well, I'll just I'll record it and stick it maybe on the discussion board thing. Discussion board link, and then maybe after you guys do yours, I'll just get on and watch it.
Okay.
Like in the evenings or something, when I can get on, I'll just watch your guys's and leave whatever comments I'm supposed to.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies.
So, okay, hopefully, maybe that'll be a good plan. Okay, well, good luck, Shancy.
Chancy, prayers are with you.
Thank you. Travel safe, Melissa.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we'll see you all next week.